Day 635 of the Trump administration. And while the president had no public events on his schedule today, he certainly launched a few on social media. And then, for good measure, this evening sat down for an interview with the Associated Press on a range of topics. Zeke Miller, one of those three reporters who conducted the interview there in the Oval Office, standing by to join us live. Trump's comments about the missing journalist Jamal Khashoggi are perhaps the most striking. Khashoggi disappeared 2 weeks ago at the Saudi consulate in Turkey. Trump told the AP on this, quote, "I think we have to find out what happened first." Here we go again with, you're guilty until proven innocent. I don't like that. We just went through that with Justice Kavanaugh, and he was innocent all the way as far as I'm concerned. And here is what he said in yet another interview today, taped earlier to air tonight on Fox Business.
It depends whether or not the king or the crown prince knew about it, in my opinion. Number one, what happened, but whether or not they knew about it. If they knew about it, that would be bad. If they didn't know about it, bad things can happen.
Decisions that you face as president.
Let's hope we hear the proper answers.
Back to the AP interview, he talked about his party's chances for the midterms. As we've seen, he stepped up his presence on the trail of late. Today, he told the AP, quote, he won't accept the blame if Republicans lose the House in November, arguing that he is helping Republican candidates in the midterms. He seemed to be hedging his bets in his conversation, again, with Fox Business.
I think we're going to do well. Now, who knows? I mean,
but a lot of that
history says
you.
The opposite. You know
right?
that.
As we mentioned, he was active on Twitter today, beginning with an attack on Massachusetts Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren, who yesterday caused cringes in her party by announcing test results that show distant Native American ancestral roots. Quoting here from the president, Pocahontas, the bad version, sometimes referred to as Elizabeth Warren, is getting slammed. She took a bogus DNA test. He added just tonight, Elizabeth Warren is being hammered even by the left. Her false claim of Indian heritage is only selling to very low IQ individuals. The president then this afternoon moved on to Stormy Daniels, quote, federal judge throws out Stormy Daniels' lawsuit versus Trump. Trump is entitled to full legal fees. Great. Now I can go after Horseface and her third-rate lawyer in the great state of Texas. She will confirm the letter she signed. She knows nothing about me. A total con. Daniels wasted no time firing back, writing in part, in addition to his shortcomings, he has demonstrated his incompetence, hatred of women, and lack of self-control on Twitter again. Game on, Tiny. Trump kept up the attack on Daniels, even with adults present during the AP interview in the Oval Office, and we quote, Trump did not back down from derisively nicknaming Daniels Horseface. Asked by the AP if it was appropriate to insult a woman's appearance, Trump responded, you can take it any way you want. In addition to that, Trump also weighed in on the investigation into his former personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, who testified under oath that Trump was involved in planning the hush money payments to Stormy Daniels. Trump told the AP Cohen lied under oath and called his allegation, quote, totally false. And in regular news, we also learned who will be replacing the departing White House counsel, Don McGahn. Trump told the AP that he selected Pat Cipollone, a veteran of the Bush 41 Justice Department, to be his new White House counsel. With that, let's bring in our leadoff panel on a Monday night. One of the reporters who interviewed the president today there in the Oval Office, the aforementioned Zeke Miller, White House reporter for the Associated Press. Phil Rucker, Pulitzer Prize-winning White House bureau chief for the Washington Post, and Jill Colvin, White House reporter, also with the Associated Press. Zeke, we'll start with you. And I guess in the old days, you used to be able to go through Hope Hicks to avoid the chief of staff if you wanted to talk to the president. Did you go through traditional channels? Was this a vetted and official interview? And lastly, how did you find him?
Well, we were joined in the Oval Office by Press Secretary Sarah Sanders, Communications Director Bill Shine, and Counselor to the President Kellyanne Conway. This was the president was in fairly good spirits. This is capping a couple of weeks where you've seen him very accessible to the press, and we were grateful that he was able to sort of sit down for and answer a bunch of questions that we felt were important to our readers and the American public and the world at large. And I think if you look at the interview, you read the interview, some of the coverage out of that, you can see in there some questions we have not heard the president answer, and hopefully made some news out of that.
You say the way you put it is absolutely correct. He's coming off what you could call a good run for his base and his party. But I also heard it argued tonight that with what he did just today alone on Twitter, it's kind of the classic pattern of stepping on their own good news.
There's certainly an element of that if you look at the president's sort of political history, where he does, sort of in the conventional wisdom sense, does step on his own news. But the way the president sees it, this election, and he's been very clear, he was clear to us about that today, is that he views this as a referendum on himself and his policies, and that, for all of the Republican pundits and strategists who say he should stay out of this election and try to not insert himself to these races and stay back and keep quiet on Twitter, he believes, that this is just like 2016 is what he told us. He feels that the electorate is like 2016 when he defied all the odds and all the prognosticators and, in his view, all of the polls, and is now sitting in the Oval Office. So there's an element of, you can see some of that, the president drawing those parallels where he feels he's going to insert himself, make this election about himself. He's willing to engage in ways now in the run-up to the election, the same way we saw him do 2 years ago, where others in the party may cringe. The president sort of seems very confident in his strategy here. So,
Jill, however reminiscent it may be of Woodrow Wilson and FDR, just kidding, we have the president of the United States calling a porn star horseface today publicly and then doubling down on it. I want you to watch and listen with us to the reaction today in this studio from Nicole Wallace, lifelong Republican, aide in the Bush White House, to the president and his choice of words.
This is the kind of language that has come to define Trump's presidency and his party, which elected and continues to support and cheer a man whose public insults of women have included Miss Piggy, Miss Housekeeping, degenerate, slob, pig, bleeding very badly from a facelift, not my first choice, low IQ, wacky, and of course, look at that face. Would anyone vote for that?
Jill, how do you process it? How do you cover it with anything approaching the standards we used to use for your job?
Well, it's definitely very difficult when you've got a president. This is language that we heard from him very frequently as a candidate on the campaign trail. Those comments that were listed over there, referring to Carly Fiorina, for instance, one of his Republican primary opponents, saying, why would anyone vote for someone with a face like that? So it's something that we've grappled with now for a long time. It's still jarring to hear that language coming out of the president, seeing that from his official Twitter feed. But what you can tell with the president here is that, look, he was able to win the election despite the fact that he made comments like this, and in his mind and in the minds of some around him, because he made comments like this, because he broke the mold, because he was willing to say what he was thinking, was able to create this impression that he was this kind of swaggering, tell it like it is kind of person. And he believes that his base is going to stick with him, even when, and maybe because, he's choosing to do things like this. That said, the president now is the leader of a party. He's not just a candidate on his own. He's the leader of a Republican Party that is about to have a very, very consequential election now in less than a month. And when you've got voters across the country, especially those suburban Republican or independent-leaning women in these districts who are trying to make up their minds, they may be looking at the president here and saying, you know what, is this the party that I want to send back to Congress?
Just a quick note to our viewers, because we're having electronic transmission problems where Phil and Jill are. Even though they're in our Washington facilities, they might as well be on the other side of a planet, because we have long delays between my questions and their answers. Having explained that, Phil Rucker, what is going on here? This has to be called a media blitz. He got close to 12 million viewers, which I'm amazed he hasn't already told us, on 60 Minutes Sunday night, and then today's round.
Yeah, look, President Trump is trying to be his party's best surrogate here in the run up to the midterm elections. He wants to be everywhere all the time. He's taking questions from reporters at every opportunity, on Air Force One, on the White House North Lawn, in the Oval Office, and I think this is going to continue in the days to come. We're 3 weeks away from Election Day, and what we see from the president is he's confident, but he's also pugnacious and defiant. And as carefully as Senate and House and gubernatorial candidates have tried to tailor their final closing pitches to voters, what they're realizing now is it's really all about Trump, and that's how how it's been in Washington for the last 2 years, and that's how it is on the campaign trail right now, as voters in a lot of states are beginning to vote already early. They're thinking about horseface. They're thinking about, Trump parodying the cover story of Saudi Arabia. They're thinking about whatever controversy he might ignite tomorrow or the next day, and it's veering the election in different areas. But what you have is a president who's supremely confident in his own ability to direct his party's message and to shape this election and to determine a winning outcome. He truly believes that I think Republicans are going to hold the Senate and that he can do what he can to stave off severe losses in the House.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.